Hello, everyone, and welcome to Grow As We Go.
Hi, everyone. My name is Angie.
I'm Diana.
I'm Fatima.
And I'm Ashley. So for today's episode, we have a very special guest. His name is Alejandro Gutierrez, and he's actually related to Angie. So welcome.
Welcome.
Appreciate it. Thank you. I'm super happy to be here with you all.
Thank you. So today's episode is going to be a little bit more of kind of like a everything you should know about politics 101, or kind of like a info session of why we should kind of like be involved within politics, because I know that can be such like a taboo subject, or like nobody really wants to, like, I guess, bring up that topic. So Alejandro, do you want to tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, definitely. Let's see. I'm a first-gen Chicano. My parents are from Guadalajara, Jalisco. Both of them, they most immigrated when they were young, 18, 20 years old. And they had me and my sisters. So I'm the first generation exploring the American system, learning its education system, its political system. I'm lucky enough to be a first-gen graduate from our local university here at Cal State San Bernardino, where I was also student body president, and I served my senior year, which was an amazing experience, representing not only the students of San Bernardino, but also the community of San Bernardino. Cal State San Bernardino is the only four-year university, public four-year university in the county of San Bernardino. So it plays a vital role in really creating pathways of success for our community. So it really opened my eyes to just the role of education and what it offers for people who share my identity, and just the people, my neighbors, everybody who around me. That influenced me to get involved in education. As I previously mentioned, education it was my gateway, my ticket to success in my eyes, and allowed me to dream, and not only myself, but allowed my family to dream as well.
Exactly.
Because they're dreaming with me as I dream of different possibilities for myself. So they lived through me. So I got into education. I actually was I'm a former educator. I taught in Jacksonville, Florida for 2 years out in the South. So way different from the experiences I think that are happening here in SoCal, but very similar in a way. So I went to a Title I school here in Bloomington, which, for those who don't know what a Title I school is, it's Title I's what is classified federally for that school to get extra funds by the state and the federal government, because it's primarily of low income and underrepresented students. Typically low test scores, high students, and a lot of students in the classroom. High dropout rate, high teen pregnancy rate, high drug use, things like that, right? And so I was a teacher in Jacksonville, Florida, in a Title I school as well, but out in the South. The South is what's considered the Bible Belt, that's a whole another conversation, but it was a great experience. It was I taught at a school that was 95% Black, African American, and 2-3% Hispanic, and then the rest white. Just to give a little context of what type of school I was teaching at. I was teaching at a school that was named after a Confederate leader, so a slave owner, and 95% of my kids were Black. And so there's still visible symbols of oppression, of a hierarchy of races in the day-to-day lives of my kids and my children. So that environment was alive. I think in California, a lot of those symbols are beneath the surface. It's harder to see. But in Florida, Jacksonville, they were visible. It's like, it's right there. So it was an experience. Now I came back home after 2 years. I work for the county, for an organization called First Five San Bernardino, which we are a funding organization. We fund nonprofits and NGOs and county departments that have to do with programs from 0 to 5. So anything that has to do with children 0 to 5 prenatal, we fund them. So we have like a $22 million budget a year. And so I work with them, evaluating, making sure that our money is creating the impact in the community that we look for. So that's a long-winded speech of who I am.
Very wonderful. Thank you so much
what I've done.
Yeah.
Of course.
How crazy was it? Like, because I know in Florida, they don't have like NGSS standards, or they have completely different standards, like Common Core standards from like the rest of like the states. So I'm pretty sure that must have been insane to adapt to.
Yeah, it was very different. I think the Common Core standards is something very different way of thinking and processing information. They have a very punitive grading system out
Mm,
there. And so back here when we were younger, if schools weren't doing good, they cut funding. That is no longer the case in California now. If schools are not performing, they actually get more money
more.
in California.
Yeah.
But over there in Florida, they adopted our old model where it's if they're not doing well, let's cut their funding. And so
Yeah.
if our school wasn't doing well, we would get less money and less
Yeah.
resources. And so it
Wow.
was just a self-deprivating cycle. So yeah, it was
Wow.
very interesting. It was a like a crazy experience. My heart still burns from the experiences my kids went through.
Yeah.
Those experiences really guide my political lens that I take with me because how we engage politically really dictates those outcomes and situations that are breeding inequities and injustice in our communities. So that's
Hmm.
why it's really important to get involved politically, which I'm hoping I could give you all the 101.
Yeah.
I ain't no
Yeah.
professor, but I'm gonna do the best I
Which kind
can.
of
Thank
brings
you.
us up to one of our first questions is how are you involved in politics, or like what are some of the ways that you have incorporated yourself?
So how am I involved? I think the way I am involved in politics is being up to date with who my elected officials are and understanding what are their key values or what they're looking to promote with regards to policy. So that's how I get involved. And the reason I get involved like that way is because locally is what I have most control over. And
Hmm.
the people who are representing me at the local, state, or even federal level, they're technically responsible to have my voice heard and my story heard, not only for myself, but the story of the people who I'm connected to, because that is their job. They're elected to represent me. So whenever I see that they aren't representing the needs or there's an injustice happening in our community or there's a gap of service,
Hmm.
um, then I figure out who do I need to tell to get this fixed because they have the power.
Gotcha. And I was going to ask a little bit if you wanted to probably give a very brief introduction of what elected officials are like locally. So I know we have like our mayor. But how does that
Mhm.
go for someone who wouldn't know the structure?
Yeah, definitely. I think it's super important to start like right there for the city. Who are the local officials for the city? And I think starting from there at the most local level and then going up from there is the best way to think about it. So yes, there's a mayor of every city, and then along with the mayor is the one person that represents the city, but he's not he or she, and I apologize for that, for just my mind naturally going to he, which is a whole nother issue in itself. So they are the ones who represent the city, but they aren't the ones that make all the decisions. So the ones that make all the decisions, they are a body of people who represents different districts in a city. So if you imagine a city, they're cut up into different districts.
Hmm.
And so depending on where a person lives, they have their own representative that is supposed to be in tune to what their district wants. And so each district has their own representative for the city. And then once you start there, they have their own local policy. At the city level, they control sales tax mostly. So we all pay sales tax in our city. All that money after we pay for, I don't know, ice cream, and whatever it may
Yeah.
be,
Yeah.
the bottom sales tax that goes to part of it goes to the city, part of it goes to the
Ah,
state. The
okay.
city uses that money for different things that they need to spend it on: road repairs, new buildings. A lot of it goes to the police. Most of it goes to the police, and things like that. Public safety, parks and rec, things like that. And then above that, there is the state level, which the state levels, again, we're in the state of California, but within the state, there's broken down districts. And so within our district, just because I know a lot of you all grew up here in
Hmm.
Fontana. So we have two different representatives that represent this area of Fontana at the state level. There's the assembly, which the assembly, the way I like to think about the assembly, is like Congress. Congress has three branches of government.
Hmm.
You got, or the federal has three branches of government. It has Congress, the Senate, and then the executive. Well, the state's the same thing. It's three branches. You got the assembly, which is like Congress. You got the Senate, which is the exact same thing as the Senate in the federal government, and then you got the executive branch, which is the governor.
Gotcha.
And so, yeah, here in California, we have Eloise Reyes as our assembly member for the IE parts of it. And then we have Connie Leyva is our senator. And they're really high up in the ranks in the state, which is really unique to have because, yeah, there's a lot of representatives in California. So, yeah,
Interesting.
that's a little
That was
overview.
very, yeah, because I did not know anything about that
I
stuff.
know.
Thank you.
I'm like so intrigued. I'm like, oh my God, I did not know anything.
No, and I think that is so interesting that the fact that exactly we whenever we think of government, we think of politics in general, we automatically assume, oh, president, and that's pretty much it. Like we're not aware or made aware, I guess, through our education. Maybe, I mean, at least I don't remember being made aware so like or the emphasis on local elections growing up. It was always just like the presidential election, but thank you for explaining that because I'm sure that's going to be helpful to a lot of people. So thank you.
Yeah.
And that's only a piece of it. I do want to mention just quickly is that's only a piece of the jurisdiction. That's the city and the state level. But we also got to think about our school elections
Yeah.
and the school districts. We have elected officials at that level as well, which play a vital role in the outcomes or of what's
Definitely true.
happening in a lot of our experiences as just people growing up here. School is a common denominator for a lot of us, and there's representative officials that also make decisions at that level as well, which are elected by district.
Thank
I mean,
you.
I don't know who our school elected officials are.
It's like I knew about this, but I wasn't never really involved or even like inform myself about it. Because I remember
Yeah.
somebody came, they wanted to run for like I think what you mentioned about the districts, because she showed me like a map and it was like Fontana and it was like divided into like different color blocks. And there's like, oh,
Yeah.
I'm taking over like this area and this person's this area. So is that what you were like talking
hmm
about? Oh, okay.
Yeah, that's exactly it. So you probably had someone running that wanted to get your vote. And so they go to door usually. Like
Yeah.
Eloise Reyes came here, which was cool. They met my mom and dad, and it's always great to see that they're making the effort. Most of the time, they don't really go door to door.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a huge disconnect, as you all are mentioning.
There's a reason why we weren't aware of this and we weren't educated on this.
Mhm.
Are they the ones involved in that decision or who?
I think it all has to go down with the selected requirements that each state has for like their teaching requirements. But I think the teachers are given the option to see how they want to incorporate those lessons within, because like teachers, they give them, these are the standards that you have to teach, but
Mm,
you're given that you can teach them however you want. There's not like a paper cut way that you should teach it. So I think it also has to
mhm.
reflect on how those teachers want to kind of incorporate the students' surroundings and their community within their lessons. And that's a whole nother conversation. It's like how students can be more involved in like government and stuff, like, oh crap, like this is happening at my mayor's, like that's like, it has to do with the way teachers teaching philosophy works, I think, right? I don't know, that's
Yeah,
what.
yeah. I think you're right in mentioning that with teachers who are teaching lessons, they have to follow state curriculum because state curriculum is tied to funding because we're a state funded school. They have their own way they could approach those standards, which has a lot to do with the school board members on the type of criteria they set in and the type of flexibility they give. Um, so there is, I have heard local governments saying we could teach these standards, but we're going to teach them this way. And there's ways that you can have a lot of flexibility. Yeah, there's a lot to unpack in that question.
Yeah, for sure. I think it's evident through, this discussion we've been having so far that politics and especially locally is affecting our lives in numerous amounts of ways. So why do you think we should care about politics locally and federally?
I think if we don't get involved, we won't see change ultimately, and people are going to be receiving the short end of the stick. And when we think about the individuals who receive the short end of the stick, it's those who do not speak up that receive the short end of the stick. It goes back to like that analogy of like those the loudest mouth is who's going to get fed. And unfortunately, this is what I've noticed, and this is my personal experience. I was hesitant to get involved in politics or even care about it because I've never heard anybody talk to me about politics. I didn't even know
Mm-hmm.
who represented me. So I was evident by my experiences that they didn't care about me because no one
Mm.
approached me about who was my elected official. So what did it matter if I said something, because they're not in my life. They're not doing anything for me from what I see. So why should I care? And
Mm-hmm.
so that mentality is a self-deprecating mentality that is constantly keeping things the way they are. And
Right.
so the way we change those is by, I think, getting involved and saying, hey, I'm showing up. And best believe I'm going to call you out when I get to call you out, whoever it may
Mm.
be that's representing us. And the more we start paying attention to what's happening in these decision making tables, what I've noticed, no one's going to these meetings. No one knows what's going on. There's a low voter turnout because they want to keep it that way because it's easier for them to get away with things that are injustice, and they sit
Mhm.
on power.
Yeah.
And so we need to get involved so that way we could start changing the affairs and changing the way they're speaking about some of our communities, because some of the things that
Yeah.
they're investing in per se, they say, oh, this community needs this, but then you ask them, how do you know that? When have you ever said that this community needs this? How do you even
Right.
know that? So they're creating these initiatives, they're using our tax money to create things,
These
to
narratives.
to fix these things on these narratives that they think they know, but they won't ever know these narratives unless we speak our narratives. And so they're creating our narratives in their mind. They're whatever they think in their mind that
Yeah.
they think these pockets of community are.
Uh-huh.
They create these solutions to those fake narratives, and it's just a self-deprecating cycle because they're not really addressing the root cause of things. So we need to get involved so that we could really start designing based off of the core experience of these individuals, because they're the ones that should be taking ownership of
Mm-hmm.
their power.
Repercussions.
It's like
Yeah.
innately theirs because it's their voice, you know. So I think that's why I think we should get involved politically, um,
That's
so we could actually
crazy.
see change.
I didn't think about it like that, and like literally, like I've been enlightened.
Mhm.
Like I didn't think about it like that, and it does make sense. And I feel like kind of most often people are like, oh, I'm just gonna grow up and live the same life that I've been living for the past 20 something years. But then you realize, like, do you really want to do that?
Yeah, I think it's very important that you advocated on staying involved. And something that it's been very important to me, and I'm sure to many others, is what is a proactive way to go about finding news or information?
That's a great question, and I think this is something that I think about often because when I was involved in student government, I always struggled with how can I get the voice of the people I represent at the table when decisions are being made. And I had a lot of trouble with that. But luckily, we live in an era where we could follow these politicians online and we get to see what they're doing in their day-to-day lives,
Mm.
because they're all on social media now. And so I
Yeah.
think the best way to stay involved politically, one is to find out everybody who represents you in your district. There is websites online that will tell you if you put your address, it'll pop up every single person that represents you.
And then for those who are listening or watching, we could put it on our social media platforms for you guys all to use.
Yeah, I think it's super important to put those platforms out, and then that way you could follow them on social media because yeah, they're on there. They're on there, and that's how they keep up to date. And best believe you hit them up and say, "Hey, I live in your district." You will see their full attention on you. They'll be so eager to learn your experience and how they could best serve you. Um,
Mm.
some of it, most of it, honestly, is authentic. I think it really is. Some people, some politicians are not, and you'll know really quickly who you like and who you don't like. Yeah, that's a great way to stay involved. Second layer to that, I think, is the way I stay involved is I sign up for newsletters. I'm always in my email, so I sign up for local news that helps keep me informed what's happened locally. That's at the local level. So I do maybe San Bernardino Sun, or I may do an educational nonprofit that's part of the IE that always their job is to advocate at the political level advocate at the local, state, and federal level. So I pay attention to some of the inner workings that they have, and I sign up for their newsletter. And so it becomes automated for me to receive this information. And then that way I see it in my
Mm.
inbox. So I use newsletters as that like second layer of support along with social media. Above that, that's the local state level. Above that, I find news sources that I appreciate that are very objective. I find ways to follow them on social media. And in addition to that, I get sign up for their newsletters as well. So it's a constant stream of information that I care about that I receive on a daily basis, and I trust these news sources. I don't only just trust these news sources, I get a variety of different
Mm.
outlets so
That's
that it's
good.
not
Yeah.
just one type of
Yeah.
stream of information, because there is
Yeah.
there's a different ways to display some information. So it's super good at like explore a lot of different avenues. But yeah, newsletters is a great way, and then just social media.
Do you want to like shout out any if you can think of like the top of your head, kind of
Hmm.
more generally that you
Yeah,
can think of?
so I like Axios. Axios is really good, and they have Axios morning, PM. They have Axios for markets for the financial markets. So you got experts from the financial industry from both sides of the column giving their expertise on the daily news, the daily happenings. You got Axios Science. Axios Science. All of the newsletters that they've been releasing has been amazing because they got experts talking about the direction of like what is Biden taking on his science cabinet. So they
Mm,
talked about every individual from the science cabinet and what they bring to the table and what their
mm,
expertise is and how that differentiates from the previous administration. The New York Times as well. I also listen to BBC News. And the reason I
Mm.
listen to BBC News, which is it's a British company, is because I loved getting the international lens because sometimes like the US lens gets
Mm-hmm.
Egocentric.
overwhelming and I'm
Yeah.
like
Very
honestly I
saturated.
just want to it's super saturated. And so I personally recommend listening to like an international lens because they do pay attention to what's happening in the US. They give their lens so you kind of could hear, oh, this is what they think of us type of thing. And then they also talk
Mm-hmm.
about what's happening in South Africa with regards
Yeah.
to maybe innovations in science. They talk about all the things going on in the
Yeah.
global world news. If you like global news, Al Jazeera is also a good global news source as well. So that's another way to diversify the news stream is checking out some of those global news pieces, which I recommend because it's humbling to hear other
Exactly.
international lenses, which
Yeah.
I think it's
Yeah.
something that's
Yeah.
missing in the United States. All the layers of society really need to be aligned to create progress. And
Right.
it's cool to just see that international lens because that's the stage that most people do not even touch. It's such a
Mm.
taboo area. Which
mm,
is, it's like the Paris Climate Agreement is one of the products of international
Relations.
politics,
Yeah.
which
mm-hmm.
is pretty dope. I think individuals who want to get involved locally, they should start with figure out who represents them and find a way to talk to them. They are so willing to talk and they get excited when individuals are willing to talk. And then that way they have a lot of connections to really just help remove any barriers that a person may be having.
How did you go from our family not being too politically involved into this change to wanting to learn more and be more of an advocate? Like what was that spark? Like what when
What
did that switch
changed?
happen?
Um, I think that change started in me when I started getting involved in clubs and organizations in college. Um, and at that level, that's a mirror image of what it means to get involved politically, because the same governance in clubs and organizations is the exact same governance on how our society is mirrored at a larger scale. And so when I started getting involved at clubs and organizations, I started realizing that I could make a change in some of the experiences that I was experiencing, such as school, and then the people around me were experiencing. So I felt a calling to
Mm.
represent not only my experiences, because I noticed my experiences weren't at the table. They really weren't at the table. And that was that that in itself was a driving force to get involved politically. Um, And then the more I started analyzing, seeing what voices were at the table, the more I realized that I am super privileged in how I navigate this world. One as a male, one as a 6 foot straight male that could be white passing. I have so much privileges in this world, and my experience wasn't at the table. So now let's look at the people I grew up with that that like my best friends were black. Some of them had learning disabilities growing up in high school, and no one from my circle of friends went to college. And so the way I saw society was that my friends weren't different from me. They were exactly who I was. They taught me how to work hard. I learned more from them than what I learned from my teachers, but I was the one that was able to get out. And so the way I saw local politics and local governance was these people who are making decisions that are supposed to be helping our communities, they are failing us. And so we need to make sure that we take them out and we tell them what they need to do, because if not, the same thing what happened to my friends is going to continue to happen generation after generation, year after year after year after year. These statistics don't change unless someone changes something. And so that's what really caused me to get involved, because it ended up being there wasn't that voice at the table to say, hey, this is happening. They literally gloss over it, like, no, oh yeah, oh that sucks. Oh yeah, 40% are reading at grade level. That sucks.
What does it look like to get involved? You know, like what are, like, we noticed, like you said, to like get to know your officials, but like what do you do after that? Like what are, like, you know what I mean? Like what are some action steps that you can be physically involved?
I think the most basic level of getting involved is voting. That is the most powerful way to get involved, because a vote matters. If we look at the people who are voting in our county or even local politics, even nationally, we're as a democratic nation, we have probably one of the worst voter turnouts in the world, honestly, for a democratic nation. And at the local level is even worse. I think we have a 20% voter turnout at the local level, which means 80% of the voices that are happening in our society are not being
80%.
heard. Yeah. And
I
so
did not know this.
it is crazy. Someone literally could just put their name on a ballot and they have a really good chance of winning, to be completely honest. The disenfranchisement of individuals in San Bernardino County is among the highest I know for sure, SoCal. We have a really disenfranchised community with regards to having their local representatives be accessible to their voice. And so the best way I think get involved is 1, voting. 2, finding out who your elected officials are, talk to them. And 3, start talking to your neighbors, connect with your local community, and then start talk to one person about what's happening at the local level. Just, hey, I noticed that there's a whole group of warehouses in our neighborhood. This sucks. And just start talking about it. Like, talk to neighbors, talk to people, talk to the local people around. That is getting involved. And then to take it a step further, use that information to tie it back to whoever your local officials is, so that they can know what's going on.
And does that look like email, like writing letters to like your local officials or like that?
I think it is. I think it's calling them, if that's accessible. I think it's hitting up on social media. For me, that's the easiest way I get involved, is like, yo, I seen this. This is what's happening. I'll do a quick
Is this like
DM.
over Instagram or Twitter or Facebook?
Over Instagram, Facebook, Twitter. That is a good way to get involved. There's also monthly meetings that happen at the state level. I think that's also an opportunity to get involved. Right now, they're all over Zoom. So live streaming them, just jump on, and you could even send your comments or questions ahead of time.
Well, Angie mentioned to me something you said about like the warehouses being not good in a way. I want to know why is it like a negative thing? Because besides you guys, every adult that I have talked to is excited about having warehouses because it looks pretty. They're like, oh my God, it looks clean, it looks pretty. You know, they're not really informed of why it's there. They're just looking at the aesthetic of it.
I think a lot of people try to like say like, oh, it's bringing so many jobs, like it's good for our community, but in reality, like you have to look at the long-term effects. You have to look at the environmental chemistry behind that, and how much pollution and how we're inhaling these things that are not natural, and it just leads to history of
asthma,
like bad health histories. And you're also driving in all this community, like trucks. It's not normal to have so many truck drivers in your, like, you know, it just like, it's not like we're like in the middle of nowhere, you know what I mean? Like if we wanted to have warehouses, I feel like they could be built in areas that are not as populated, like behind our high school, you know what I mean? Like, why are you going to build a warehouse behind our high school where that's like a heavy populated area? So I think it's ways of where you can incorporate those warehouses to make them be more efficient or healthy for citizens of that.
I mean, because if
county.
we think about it, like Fontana has like how many? What's their population of Fontana?
200,000 plus.
Like, it's a lot of people and on like a certain square mileage. So on top of the people, we have cars, diesel trucks, now this, and soon to be a Amazon. Is that still going on? Like an Amazon
airport in San Bernardino.
Like what? That's a lot I know about that. Of that quality of air in our area, you know? Like, I mean, even going hiking up the mountains, like the water tower by our house, like in the mornings when we would go, you see a thick layer consistently. And I could only imagine like how kids in the future generation are going to grow up and how quality's going to look for them breathing wise. And it's just.
And I think a layer that may be missing from what we're mentioning, addition on top of the environmental, the health aspect, is what does it look like for individuals growing up here where their daily lives, their daily experiences, they see warehouses all the time. At the subliminal level, it's like, what are these experiences of what the possibilities of life are in my daily experiences of me walking to school? What is my environment telling me is capable for me to go to? Like, what can I do with my life? And so when we look at different pockets of communities that may have different health outcomes, educational outcomes, let's look at their job market, their job industries that are in those communities. We see a diverse outcomes, a diverse set of possibilities of different type of career pathways, and it's evident in these kids' lives. They might go home, they have conversations with their parents, they might be a lawyer, or the mom's a doctor, a heart surgeon, neurosurgeon. Their neighbor is a banking investor, XYZ. But now let's look at the experiences that at our local level, what are the outcomes that we experience in our daily lives? And so at the subliminal level, these warehouses in a way is creating like a bubble to really, which I truly believe is telling our kids, yo, this is what you got at your home. This is what the outcomes are. But now let's go look at our neighbors. What are our neighbors doing? So much people from my high school that still work at UPS and FedEx, because that's what was available to us. And that's still what they're doing now. And let's look at where these places are being built. Yeah, they're great job markets. The market's there, it's great. But why isn't it being built here and not in Rancho? Why is it being built in Bloomington area, but not in North Fontana Summit area? Why is it not being built in Chino Hills? And to be completely honest, why? I bet if they try to build it, you would have half of Chino Hills at these local city council meetings saying, you ain't going to build this warehouse down my street. You're not going to put that 7-Eleven here. We are disenfranchised, disconnected from that process of decision making, where our voice isn't present there. So they do it. And then before we know, it's like, wow, we got 20 warehouses, right? If I walk down the street, I got 20 warehouses just chilling there. And there's diesel trucks 24/7 on my street. I read a report 2 days ago, but it's a report that shows the trends for the economy in the Inland Empire for the next couple years. And if we look at those trends, they're all like warehouse jobs, all these hard labor jobs, construction, things like that. And so it made me think, okay, so these are the job markets that are here in our area. But if we tell our kids, let's just go to classroom and say, hey, kids, what do you guys want to be when you grow up?
Yeah.
And they tell us what they want to be. And then we go, well, that's great, because at your house, at your home, you can't be that, you know? It's like those jobs aren't being invested by your local politics. They're not even part of the discussion here. It's not even going to be a job opening for you at your own house, at your own home that you grew up in, because you can't be an astrophysicist from San Bernardino and live in San Bernardino. Those jobs aren't being invested in. So that's like something else that kind of frustrates me. And that's why I think getting involved politically is super important, is because these job trends, these economic growth that's happening in cities are designed. They don't naturally just happen. They're designed, and they're being designed at the political tables, at the city council meetings. They think through these things. They create tax proposals to invite these companies to be there, and then they create these businesses. They are fabricating the outcomes of these communities. And so we need to make sure that what we want is being fabricated at that table.
Oh. I have a lot to educate my family on.
Do you have anything else that you think we should talk about?
So I think this is super important, is reflecting on our life experiencing and recognizing what experiences or what choices really created an opportunity for a diverse set of possibilities for opportunity for you. Look back through your just life in general and see, how can I replicate those experiences at a younger age for our community? It's like, why do I have to learn what I learned in college? Why can't that be learned in high school? Why can't those experiences be learned in middle school? You know, it's like, why can't these type of conversations start happening earlier? And how can I bridge that gap? So that way, those individuals don't need to wait till they're 21, 22 years old to get this epiphany saying, man, only if I knew that earlier, because those kids are us. And so it's like, how can we reach out to them and say, hey, I'm here as a resource, and no one came up to me, but I'm coming up to you. Maybe that one person that says, hey, I know who you are. I was you when you were younger. Listen to me, boy. Listen, this is what you could do. This is what's possible for you. Hold up. You don't even need to listen to me. Let me take you there. Let me show you what's 5, 10 miles away from this little bubble you in, because there's more than just Bloomington and South Fontana. Let's take you out to Joshua Tree. Let's take you out what's possible over there. Let's go meet some financial advisors that are making big bucks in the I don't know, stock market. Let's go show you some marine biologists that are looking to try to save the coral reefs, you know, those type of experiences and conversations, and show these kids that there's different possibilities. I think that's super important. That really will encourage individuals to see their reality as malleable and changeable, that their actions can change their outcome. Like, they can control where their future is going. A lot of people that I personally know, it's like, you know, destiny is going to take me where destiny goes. Nah, destiny is going to take you. You're going to choose where you go based off of your actions. You know, it's cause and effect. It's physics. We got to show them that they have agency.
And I think that's kind of interesting that you bring it up, because it kind of should motivate us, help influence like the younger people around us and like our siblings and our cousins. And I don't know, just to like motivate them and see and show them that like, it's not just destiny, like you can do whatever you want. You know what I mean? Yeah. That's a really interesting, important point.
Yeah. And I really like that you brought up the importance of kind of allowing that curiosity to live in children's minds at a young age. Because I feel like we kind of grew up, and I think through our education system and just in our environment in general, it has been slowly, little by little, kind of stripped away from us. And we start to, based on our surroundings, we start to forget we are able to create our own future and our own possibilities.
Right.
And when we take them out of their natural cycle of like, this is what my life is, they experience something new, and in those moments natural curiosity starts to spring, and when they get comfortable, they start dreaming, they start asking questions. They're like, hey, this is what I like, what do you do, tell me what's going on, and their curiosity starts to spark. They want a space to speak what's on and just speak what's on their mind, and just give them the space, and they'll create a better future than any adult could ever think through.
I think it's a perfect time to go into our Discover Her segment. So what did we learn today?
I just want to thank you, Alejandro, for taking the time out of your day to do this, because you've educated on us, on even the audience, and that means the world to us. And what I've learned that's very prominent is how many layers there are in politics in our city, in our state. It comes with being selfless when you're trying to make a change for your community.
Yeah, I think what I learned from this episode is just the importance that it is to actually be concerned about politics and how we should all create awareness to our neighbors, to our family members, to everybody around us, because at the end of the day, we're being directly affected and not affected by it in terms of like we're not even being considered in political decisions. And so you get to see we are, at the end of the day, we're facing the repercussions of that. And thank you so much for enlightening us. I really enjoyed this conversation. Yeah.
I could definitely agree with you two ladies. Something I took away from this episode is that it's very important to stay involved, stay informed and aware, like at least inform the other people that don't know much, and maybe get them involved as well and create that domino effect.
Feeding back off of what all you all said, it's also it's never too late to get involved, and it's never too early to not ignite that fire within people around your community and even young kids.
I appreciate you all just listening and continue to share your story and spread awareness as work from your identity. And I think just by you all being trailblazers and doing something that is not expected from your identity is radically changing the future life that you will have, but most importantly, the future life of individuals who share your identity. You are creating the foundation for them to stand on, and you're breaking the ceiling that may have been there before them.
From our first episode, we talked about standing on the shoulder of giants, and I mentioned a brother who put that on his graduation cap. That was this brother. So, thank you, Alex, for spreading your light, and I appreciate you.
Alrighty. Thank you all for joining us today. For more content, head over to our Instagram at Girl As We Go Podcast and our YouTube channel as well. We hope y'all enjoyed your dose of growth for today, and remember to always strive for growth. And we'll see you next Tuesday at 7 a.m.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.
That I can speak to.